Hello, hello. Buenas.
Buenas,
¿Cómo
buenas.
estás?
Bien, cariño. ¿Cómo estás tú?
Muy bien. I am super
Excelente.
excited about the Chancleta Generation Podcast of today.
Yeah. Tell me. I'll send it to you later, but it was funny. My sister, love you, Brendita, sent me a little meme about chancletas. I'll share it with you later. I just thought she's thinking about the new Chancleta Generation podcast.
Yeah, I had a friend was like, are you going to make some t-shirts? Because I'll totally get one.
Oh, that's so funny. Yes.
So everyone, I am Clemencia Herrera, and I own this advertising agency called Moira Studio, and we work with people like you, Latinos in the U.S., bringing some awesome communications to them.
Excellent. And I am Cecilia del Cid, an environmental and social justice practitioner, an immigrant from Latin America, a Guatemalan, community weaver, working in communications with Clem. This is what we do. Talk a little bit about our experiences.
Yes. So one of the reasons why we changed the name and changed the format of this podcast is because we wanted to get a lot more personal, because really this is the only way that we're gonna do this, not just you and me, Ceci, but as a community, we gotta start talking about some of the things that are kind of icky and hard to talk about.
Yes.
And this topic today came
in the closet.
Yeah, the skeletons in the closet. Yeah. So this came about because I have been doing some personal work, working around some fears. And hey, I'm a business owner. I have been doing this for 8 years, and most of my day-to-day is doing things that really scare me. But there are some things that we're trying to do now that are scarier than normal for me, which is kind of I have to really come out of this comfort zone. And then I was like, why is that happening? And why is this feeling so hard? And why can't I just get this done like everything else that I've been able to do? Just put your back into it and, get it done. And why is this just so freaking hard? And that was the question that I kept asking myself. And I have a wonderful person that I get to talk to about these kinds of things. And I'm on a spiritual journey, and I meditate a lot, and I do a lot of different things to try to figure this out. Thankfully, I have the time and the resources to do this, and so I kind of wanted to bring you guys some of my conclusions. And I'll do some of that hard work for you guys and bring it over and bring you some of my thoughts, and see if it resonates with anyone, and if it kind of hits a note. I hope that it's helpful to somebody.
Yeah. And I think, as we were talking about how we were going to Chancletear today, where were we going to go, in which journey were we going to go today? And I know Clem doesn't like to go on a journey, so we're going to go on a trip, an adventure.
We're going to go on a trip, yes.
And when you prepare for anything new, to go on a trip, to go on an adventure, that can be scary too. So sometimes doing those kind of that inner, the ability to travel inwards, and to explore things that we sometimes don't want to. And Clem and I both, I have a good person that I talk to also, and I think you're much more disciplined with your practice than I am with mine. I'm still a work very much in progress, meditation, I can't
but you're
do it.
wise beyond your years.
You know, I can't really. Every day is one of those things when you're like, I'm gonna go to bed earlier and I'm gonna meditate. And sometimes I win and sometimes I lose miserably. And I'm like, let me scroll through my phone. Let me watch some memes or like. So
well, to me, it's like if I don't meditate, sometimes it's like sometimes I need it to function.
Yes, but that's.
I'm like, I'll do all these things first, and then I'll meditate, and then it completely backfires on me. I'm like, I should have meditated first.
But you see, you've learned, and it just tells me. So I think when you brought this topic, and I think when we decided, it's like I said, I think this works if we are capable of being vulnerable and sharing our thoughts. You're sharing them with me, I'm sharing mine with you, and then we're bringing our listeners along the way. And when some of the things that are scary that we as working women, as Latinas in this country of the United States, some of the things that we face or encounter in the day-to-day life that sometimes could be paralyzing, could be leave us in a way in which we cannot function. And that's why you do the work that you're doing, and that's why we're gonna have this conversation and share it.
Yeah, and exactly, and this is exactly where this came from. You know, there were some things that made me feel absolutely paralyzed, and I've been able to push through many of them just because of my personality. You know, I'm like, screw it, let's do it. Yeah. But there's some that I'm just like, where do I go from here? And so some of the things that I thought about, that I've been uncovering, you know, it's like, obviously I'm sure everybody's familiar with, like, you know, being traumatized as a child, or being like, you know, your inner child and things like that. I'm sure most of you are familiar with the programming from childhood, which is, you know, something that is very much talked about, and there's lots of resources out there for, you know, healing, you know, your childhood and things like that. But to me, there's something even beyond that. And that is like, there's, you know, what I think is like, there's also some trauma sitting in Latinos' collective consciousness. And I know that maybe this sounds like super woo-woo, but I'm not just talking about some ephemeral thing that exists out in the ether and whatever. What I'm really talking about is like baggage that we have carried from generations that has been passed on from, you know, parents to children, or from leaders to their, you know, to their communities, because of shared traumatic experiences that we have lived as Latinos, both in our countries of our origin and here in the United States. Yes. And, you know, this involves like, you know, from this, if we go back, you know, 500, 400 years ago, we're talking about stolen lands, stolen children, stolen religion, you know, languages, like, you know, our like literal
bodies,
genocide, you know, like things like this is like a, you know, extremely traumatic things to, you know, the more the present, we're talking about civil wars, we're talking about dictators. I mean, I was watching this movie the other day about the trials that they did in Argentina, where they tried to, you know, put a dictator in jail. And this is like in the 80s, and people were describing the most horrendous torture that they endured, and there's still so many people that disappeared that nobody knows what happened to them. We're talking about thousands of people that disappeared from this dictatorship. And this is not just Argentina. We're talking about, this has happened in many of our countries. The drug wars, this is like, it just keeps going and going. And then we come here to this country and then we encounter discrimination, racism, trying to learn a new language, being like not a sense of belonging, being away from your family. There's like so much so many things that we've had to endure as a collective that we can't ignore these. We can't just think that we're just gonna power through all of that and then any kind of new challenge that we're gonna find is everything's gonna feel very easy. Like, yes, we have been able to endure that, but that doesn't mean that we have come out unscathed from it, that we just come out like, yeah, it's like we've come out pretty banged up from all this. And so we're starting at this point in which we're like, man, what else is there? Like, whew, I'm just like, damn, I'm beat.
And I want to point that, you have you've been thinking a lot about this, you have, because you're in this adventure to find, and in what adventure? But I do think that there is the language, these concepts are becoming more mainstream and they're coming in social media and stuff. But I also do think that in our community, we still don't talk about many of them. We don't talk about collective trauma. We don't talk about individual trauma. We don't talk about vulnerability. Yeah. We don't talk about mental health. We don't have a lot of skills, as we have this culture that you were saying, like, we cannot afford to really be vulnerable or have moments of weakness. And I'm not saying that vulnerability takes a lot of strength to be vulnerable and to show who you are and to open your heart and to show up as the version that you are of yourself, and that is a work in progress. Takes a lot of strength. But we don't talk about it. I always tend to think of, like systems of oppression. I'm thinking there is imperialism, there is colonialism, a lot of what we've lived in the past. And then there's patriarchy, and then there is racism and anti-immigrant sentiments and extreme and capitalism who is extractivist, who is depleting. And all of those systems have very, very real personal impacts for many people. Sometimes you don't. Sometimes you are sheltered from some of them if you have some of those identities that have a little more privilege, if you are a wealthy person, if you happen to be fortunate enough to have a family that, with all the problems that it might have, is still solid, and you go to bed every night with your tummy full, and you don't live in an environment that is violent, and if you can study in peace, like if you can have playtime and joy time, and you can have nutritious food and care, love, of course that does give you like an advantage. But many of us who have grew up in systems or situations that compound all those disadvantages are like steps behind, and by the time we I think one of the things that I always, people don't, when people say why people will come here, why would they go to Europe, or it's like, because putting your body through that journey, in that boat, in that train, in that car, crossing that jungle, walking for months is less dangerous than staying where you are. And that those situations, so when we come here and you have walked that journey and you're uprooted, and and that has in itself a toll. If you have ever transplanted anything in your life, know that it takes even if you put a new plant, even if you put a healthy plant in a more nutritious soil, in a better environment, there are moments in which that plant is not going to thrive. It's going to have to adapt for a little bit, for a couple of weeks, and you have to give it water, care. Yes.
It gets stressed. Yeah.
So even if you're taking something to give it a better environment, it's going to be a period of stress and suffering, and you're uprooted. It takes time to once again find your bearings.
Yeah, and also there's also a lot of, and I think we talked about this before in another episode, there's a sense of shame of like, I had to leave because I couldn't make it work back there. You know, it's just, I am...
failure,
like,
a sense of failure.
Yeah, exactly. There's a sense of failure, and from that comes a sense of shame. Like, we couldn't make it work back there, so we had to completely uproot our family and be away from other parts of our family to do this. And so you're already starting from a failure, right? Like, you failed here, so we have to go somewhere else to try to remedy this. So there's like, it's already like, obviously, that doesn't, I'm not saying that
for everyone.
I'm not saying that it, not just that, but I'm not saying that that's the truth, right? The truth is not that we failed and then we had to go somewhere else to try it. That's not the truth. There are certain things that are completely out of our control, and we are trying to make the best out of it. So if there's a, dictator killing people back home, I'm gonna leave. That doesn't mean that I failed. That means that you failed, like they failed you. Yes. And so you have to go. So but sometimes this is all very rooted into our subconscious that we don't even know it. So I think, one of the things that it's important to do is kind of like call things for what they are. Mm-hmm. and shine a light to things, because then when you start feeling like, hey, this is not me, this is not because I failed, this is not because I'm not good enough, this is not because I'm not fit for this, or I'm inappropriate, or I whatever, it's sometimes because of something that is out of your control, that was forced into your subconscious, or into your life as a child, or into your parents when they were children, or generations before, that you're still carrying around with you, and you have to like start. You're like walking with like two tons behind you, trying to pull that. And then you're wondering, like, why do things feel so hard? And
I think that even the knowledge, and we talk a little bit about like the importance of what it is to have a good diagnosis, to shine the light, to identify what is it that is causing me pain, so that you can begin to heal it. We all know when we go to the doctor and we're like, what it hurts, and the doctor is like, well, I don't know,
we need to run some tests.
But like, it's very annoying because what you want is relief.
Yeah.
But you want to find out, you don't just want someone to give you, and which happens a lot in society, in Latinos, and it's something that my family does a lot. They self-medicate, and they'll be like, oh, just take like this pill, the pain will go away, and or like the
there's
antibiotics.
Pharmacies that sell you antibiotics, and then you're like, you're not supposed to take antibiotics for a virus.
But like, so like, we don't have the patience sometimes to work through finding the diagnosis. We just rightly so, we want the discomfort to go away. We want the pain to go away. So we do a lot of strategies that are numbing, that help us kind of limp, like, I don't even know, like, acogear. They kind of like, they don't, we stumble along. We're just kind of like barely making it because we have baggage, and also because the idea of having to really face those things that fear us. I was saying a book that I really like, and it's called The Alchemist, and it's from Paulo Coelho. And it has a very wise, I talked about this phrase, it's in my mind because I mentioned it this morning when I was in therapy, that sometimes the fear of suffering is greater than the suffering itself. Mm-hmm. And sometimes the fear of us having that wound clean, or identifying, or doing the work to heal that specific wound, we dread it so much, and we delay it, and we don't do it, and we numb it, and we make it worse, instead of just taking the time to sit with the pain and heal the wound. Sometimes life puts you in situations in which you have to. There is nothing else. You lose relationships, you lose marriages, you lose relatives, people you love, like you lose jobs. Like there's sometimes life is like there is no more running away from this. You're gonna have to face it. And I'm a firm believer that life keeps giving you the medicine you need. So when you run away, life gives you the same lesson over and over until you make the decision. That's kind of like my own like woohoo. Like I was no, life keeps giving you la misma cucharada de medicina. Like this is what you need to face this. And some of the things we have to face, as you were saying, are not ours. They weren't being passed because we have a lot of programming. And we have to take the time to and unlearning the programming is probably going to take us our
seeing
whole
the
life.
Programming for what it is first.
Yes.
And then you first see it for what it is, and then you unlearn it. Because it's like, in my case, for example, you know, I always consider myself a very strong person, and like I really believed in myself, and I was like, you know, go-getter. And after a bunch of failures in like my business, that I was just like, I have put everything I had into this, and I still failed at it. Like, what is it? Like, why is it? And again, why does it feel so hard? Why am I just like swimming against the current all the time? And then when I really started looking at things from where they were coming from, then there was that, you know, feeling of shame that I had been carrying for my whole life, which was leading me to try to prove myself to others through things that were not fulfilling to me. I was trying to somewhat live somebody else's dream and not my own. And so it didn't matter how much effort and how much sweat and tears I put into it, because it wasn't my own thing. It wasn't something that was like, that was really for me. I was never going to succeed at them. And, you know, I basically burned myself out trying to accomplish things that were not for me. Does that make any sense? Yeah, and so absolutely. I ended up burnt out and feeling like a failure, and also just saying the world is against me. And I hear this so many times. And people in, you know, Latinos, they go to brujos and everything to try to open the doors, you know, get a cleansing to open the doors. There's, you know, that abrirse las puertas, you know, there's that, like trying to get all this like brujeria done to open doors. The doors are closed because they're not meant for you. You gotta look for other doors. and that was basically what I learned from that. I was like, this is not my door. I'm like trying to bang this door down, and it's not it wasn't meant for me, or it really doesn't belong to me. It's not, it doesn't match me. So I was trying to fulfill somebody else's dream, something that was programmed into me from, I'm not just saying my parents, but like a collective consciousness of like, you know, you have to make it into this to prove yourself, and as a woman, as a Latina, as like somebody that blah, blah, blah. There's all these things that you're just like, oh, I need to prove. And I hear this in so many like TV shows, in the contest, like I'm here to prove. You don't need to prove anything. I learned that the hard way. I didn't need to prove anything to anyone. And that's when they started like shifting my thinking to like, okay, so which doors are the ones that are meant for me? And this is where I started thinking about what fulfills me, and what am I really good at, and how can I apply my skills to the things that fulfill me. And I know that this sounds to some people like, well, that's like privileged talk. I'm sure that not a lot of people are able to pick something that they really love, but who's telling you that you can't?
I think that you definitely, what you're sharing with me resonates a lot, and you and I have spoken about many very intimate things many times, and I don't think I've ever heard you say that to me, because I've felt like that. You've heard me say this, like there was moments in which there is something that, like my environmental career, like I walked away from it, and it was a big loss for me. And I still find myself to like maybe, and I know that I was good at it. I know that I'm trained at it, and I think it's something that I just was in the wrong place doing. Like it was not an environment for me. And there are things that I feel like I was really, really good, and I really, really liked doing that. And I look forward, but what I was saying also a little before we started is like I realized that what I really need I realized my purpose is not to fulfill a job or a career. That's not my purpose as Ceci in this embodied experience in this life. This morning I had a very good therapy session, and my therapist was like, I think we are loved embodied. That is what we are. That is who we are. And it takes us a lot of time to recognize that is what I am happiest when I can spend time with my loved ones, and when we can do things that we love, or that for me is whatever entices my curiosity or my art. And I don't do it as much, but the other night I was late, and then I started coloring, and before I realized it, 2 hours had gone by. And my partner came up and was like, you're still out here? And I was like, what time is it? And I was just coloring, and I got kind of caught up in it. And it's something that children do all the time. They get entangled in something and they lose themselves in that, and so I think we're talking about purpose or career, or how we earn our livelihood. For me, what is important, I am coming to understand, is I want the time that I have to spend earning my living, because that's what happens to 99% of all of us in this planet. We work for our livelihood.
Yeah.
I wanted to be of service to others. I needed to be of service to my community or to someone else. If I can improve someone else's life, that feels fulfilling to me. And I've come to understand that, but I've felt that sense of loss you describe, and I've felt that sense of I have accomplished many things in life. Where did my luck, initially was where did my luck run out? Where did I go wrong? I thought I did everything that was supposed, that everything I was told I needed to do to have that career, and it didn't happen. And I know why it didn't happen, because it's just not for me in that trajectory. Yeah, I would have been was already miserable. I left. It was harmful in many ways to me. It was probably the only toxic relationship I've had, because I've been very fortunate with my partners. But as I said, when I think I've never had an interpersonal relationship that was toxic, or what I would have called
Oh, I've had many.
violent. You know, that work relationship was, you know, and not just that one. There's been other ones, but like I realized, like, why am I pushing to be in situations that are harmful to me, and to recognize, like, you know, one thing that I've had to let go of the attachment of how I think my life was going to unfold, and actually enjoy my life, enjoy what is happening right now, the opportunities that are showing up for me, the team that I do have, the team that cares about me, the team that supports me, the people that have showed me grace and a space to show up with as a person who speaks English as a second language. And I think my English is really good, but it's not my first language, and sometimes we can get lost in translation. And to lean into curiosity and to find along the way people who want to do good things by your side. I think that has been part of my healing. But I thank you for sharing your experience, because I think it happens in many scales to many of us, because we have an idea and we're attached to the idea instead of like, what is happening in my life today? And if I don't like what is happening in my life today, that is fine. But if I can see it and can see where I'm starting, I can pivot. I can change.
Yeah. But I mean, I've seen from experience many people in my life, including family members, who are deeply unhappy in their lives because they're doing something that their collective conscious has like forced them to do, which is like, I don't know, I feel like as Latinos, you know, from where we're children, like there's like a predetermined like path that we need to take, whether that is like, you know, in the past it used to be like you had to be a doctor or a lawyer or an engineer, or there was a priest, but you know that doesn't happen as much anymore.
There's still an option.
And then there's like, you are the one that is going to graduate from college, you know, out of, you know, first one to graduate from college in the family. You are going to be the first homeowner. You're going to be the one that's going to help this family come out of poverty. Like there's like a lot of just pressure put on you from the very beginning, because we're all this like feeling, we're all kind of thrown into survival mode. And I'm not saying that that's wrong, because what you know, what this whole episode is about is like where that is coming from. You know, we are in survival mode because we have been living in survival mode for centuries. Hola, mis queridos chancleteros. So we recorded this episode and we ended up going for a whole hour. We had a lot to share, lots of personal experiences. So this is now the end of part 1. And we will be back with part 2 next episode, because you know, half an hour I think is good for for this part. Thank you so much for listening, and I hope you're enjoying this, and we will see you next week with part 2 of this episode.